The running back position has lost its luster both professionally and collegiately. But I think that will change this season. Now, that is not meaning that I think the running back room will regain all its former glory. Offense has changed and evolved. Defense has changed and evolved. Strength and conditioning has. The running back room itself has evolved. The way you run the football has evolved. You rarely see the fullback position anymore, just as an example of that. But I think that in 2023, running backs will see a resurgence in use, in style of play. I think that it will be so important that your national champion for the 2023 season will have elite running back play. Not necessarily an elite run game, though I think they will also have that, but it will be an elite run game that is centered around elite running backs. I'm not talking about Georgia from the past 2 years where they had great trench play at offensive line and tight end, and they had 3 different running backs who were all good. Maybe 1 or 2 were great, but none of them were elite. Just plugging them in, and they chugged rush after rush behind NFL offensive linemen. I think that the team who wins the 2023 national championship will have not just great trench play, but they will also truly have great running back play. They will have a lethal run game. I think most of your participants in the 2023 college football playoff will have a good, great, but more likely than not, near elite at minimum run game, and specifically running back room. And I think that contenders, true contenders, maybe some dark horse contenders too, anyone who has a shot, a real shot at any point in the year to punch their ticket to the college football playoff will have at minimum great running back play. The position is more important than people will like to admit. It hasn't lost, surprisingly, as much luster as I used to think it lost, or as many people still think it has lost. College football is not as pass-heavy as many of us would like to believe. And the facts, the evidence, the data, the statistics all back that up. Today, specifically, I want to talk about the top 3 running back rooms in the nation. I think they come out of the same conference, the Big Ten, more specifically, the Big Ten East Division. Before we get into those 3 running back rooms, I do want to mention some candidates that I think also have near elite to elite running back rooms. Alabama, Utah, Wisconsin, Oregon, Ole Miss, Kansas, Clemson, Auburn, Florida, Oregon State, Arkansas. Could maybe even put USC, UCLA, Georgia, Maryland, Baylor, BYU, Tennessee. You could maybe even add some more teams, but I think starting with when I listed USC, that was just stretching it a little bit. But especially Alabama, Roydell Williams and Jace McClellan, I think, will make one of the best duos in college football at the running back position. Pardon me. Utah has a very solid running back room. Wisconsin, we're not covering them today, despite the fact that they're in the Big Ten. I think they're outside of the top 3. But Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi is also going to be one of the nation's best duos at running back in college football. Ole Miss, they have Judkins, and he by himself is a beast. So those are some other teams who I think have elite running back rooms or near elite running back rooms, or at least could contend for those. But I think these 3 teams are just at a different level. The other teams, to give an analogy, are on the A tier. These teams are at S tier when it comes to running back. We're going to start with number 3. We'll save number 1 for last. Number 2 will be in the middle. Let's get started, but before we do, please hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment who you think is going to win the Doak Walker Award in 2023. Also, please watch the video all the way through so that this video can get in the algorithm. Thank you, and let's get started with Penn State, with running backs Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Lightning and Thunder. That was the nickname for Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins for Michigan in 2021. And you could have said the same thing to a certain degree about Ohio State's running back room, both in 2021 and this year. Miyan Williams being more of that power back, though he does have a lot of speed and a lot of shiftiness for a power back, and TreVeyon Henderson being that speed and space kind of running back. It's a very, very impressive balance that I love, and I think it's very successful. It's something that helps offenses. But to draw back on that 2021 Michigan comparison, and Michigan at moments missed the Hassan Haskins-esque play that they had in 2021. Blake Corum, despite having more of a power element this past season, it wasn't the same as Hassan Haskins in 2021. I think that's what you have, and that's sort of what I saw in Penn State in 2022. Nicholas Singleton being the speed in space monster, the 5-star that we all knew coming out of high school. Kaytron Allen got more carries, though. Did not average nearly the same amount of yards per carry, but he wasn't talked about nearly as much. And at the end of the day, he had 10 rushing touchdowns by himself. He had 867 yards. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry, and he had nearly 200 receiving yards. Kaytron Allen, there's a reason that he got more carries and more attempts than Nicholas Singleton. There was just a reason. Allen was Thunder, more consistent, more power-driven. Nicholas Singleton was the more explosive guy. And Nicholas Singleton, if you want to, compare who's the better player between the two, well, obviously, it's Nicholas Singleton, and Nicholas Singleton is the higher ceiling. Nicholas Singleton is the running back who brings the yards per carry from 5.2 to 6.0. He averaged nearly 7 yards per carry, 6.8 specifically, which was 12th in the nation, while having the 75th most carries, the 33rd most yards, and the 28th most rushing touchdowns. He also had nearly 100 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. In total, this running back room combined for 1,928 rushing yards, 22 rushing touchdowns, and 6.0 yards per carry. This running back duo, let me correct myself on that. For all of these running back rooms, I am talking about the starting two, because they use 2 deep rotational guys. And if injuries happen, or if both get gassed, or if they want to give playing time to other players, then they'll dip below the 2 deep. Michigan does this all the time. Ohio State had to do it last year when Henderson and Miyan Williams were unfortunately hurt, and luckily they had Dallin Hayden. The problem with Penn State is they don't have really anyone behind Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Nicholas Singleton is phenomenal. Kaytron Allen is phenomenal. Both are workhorses, and they complement each other very well because Singleton, when there's a mismatch that doesn't favor the Nittany Lions at the line of scrimmage, Singleton basically turns into a non-factor. Much like TreVeyon Henderson in 2022 and in 2021, and much like Blake Corum in 2021. There were times in 2022 where, due to his developed more power back abilities, he was able to overcome this at times and just fall forward when being hit at the line of scrimmage. Nicholas Singleton doesn't have that yet. Him and TreVeyon Henderson, Singleton's 2022 season and Henderson's 2021 season, I think are very comparable, and that's where Kaytron Allen comes in, the more reliable running back. Their strengths and weaknesses complement each other very well, and with Singleton's extremely high upside, Kaytron Allen's reliability, perseverance, strength, I think that's why they're a top 3 running back room. Here's a problem for the running back room, and each of these running back rooms has a problem. There's not much depth behind these two. They do have an incoming freshman at running back. They do. And they do also have Tank Smith, who's going to be a redshirt senior, but I anticipate that their third stringer will probably be incoming freshman London Montgomery. But still, if, let's say, Singleton or Kaytron Allen get injured and they're out for multiple games or for the whole year, their running back room probably goes from a top 3 running back room to one that possibly resides well outside of the top 10. if just one of them gets injured. But that just shows how devastating injuries are to college football, because that would be the case for basically any running back room anywhere. Michigan loses Donovan Edwards. Miyan Williams gets out for the season with Ohio State. That really affects a team. Penn State could have the nation's most explosive running back room, in my opinion. Nicholas Singleton, I think, has the potential to be by far the best running back in open space, and an O-line that returns 4 starters will help tremendously. Only Juice Scruggs moves on from that offensive line. So I think this will be James Franklin's best offensive line at Penn State, and outside of the Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders running back duo, this will be his best running back duo at Penn State as well. And with Mike Yurcich, I would say second best OC outside of Joe Moorhead, possibly best OC. So there's a lot of hope for Penn State in 2023 and in 2024, when Singleton and Allen will both be back for 2024 as they were true freshmen in 2022. A lot of the hope for Penn State and their potential chase for a Big Ten championship and college football playoff revolves around the new lightning and thunder, which is Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Up next, we got the Buckeyes. Now, the Buckeyes, this probably wasn't something that maybe a lot of you were expecting, but contrary to what some believe, I think when TreVeyon Henderson and Miyan Williams are fully healthy and not hampered by injuries, plus factoring in Dallin Hayden, I think that that is a top 3 running back room. And I think that's actually one that is slightly better than Penn State's running back room. Though again, I want to add all 3 of these running back rooms have potential to be the best running back room in the country. And the games will determine that, and the games will play themselves. These again are predictions. Do not freak out. But I think that Henderson and Williams, they're some of the best running backs in college football when healthy. They only combined, in saying that, they only combined for 1,396 rushing yards, 20 rushing touchdowns, though, which is a lot of rushing touchdowns for that low yardage, and they still averaged 5.9 yards per carry. Despite having a lot less healthy of a running back room than Michigan or Penn State's, they averaged close to them both in yards per carry and rushing touchdowns. They just did. TreVeyon Henderson is a lot like Nicholas Singleton. You saw that in 2021. You saw that at times in 2022. He is a speed in space stretch kind of running back. He is not a power running back. Power and Henderson do not go together. They don't. And that's a huge disadvantage in some situations, and I don't think it worked well for Ohio State and Henderson in 2022 when Ohio State last year, it was obvious from the beginning they wanted to run the football more. They wanted more of a run attack identity. That fit very well with Miyan Williams. I think Miyan Williams, in fact, now has cemented himself as the better running back, in my opinion. But Henderson is still a huge factor. And Williams, I think, has both the speed element, the speed and space element, the power and the stretch element, and he has every element possible. He is a very good running back. And if healthy, I think he will be one of the nation's best running backs and could be the nation's best running back. You also cannot forget about Dallin Hayden, who had 553 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. He filled in for Henderson and Williams when one was injured and the other was maybe lingering, or both were injured at the same time. Rarely were either of those two healthy, fully healthy, and consistently healthy for the 2022 season. You also cannot forget about Chip Trayanum, who played in the game against Michigan and looked pretty good at running back. And I think if Ohio State, if you want a pure power Hassan Haskins-like running back, and I'm using that comparison just because that's what the Big Ten knows, that's probably the Big Ten's best recent example of a power back would be Haskins, you have that in Chip Trayanum. So if you want short yardage, you want a guy who will automatically fall forward because he's just so big, physically intimidating, and a guy who can just run straightforward, pick up a 4th and 1, you got Chip Trayanum. So Ohio State has depth at running back, which is something that I don't think Penn State is as good at, just to make a comparison for number 3 and number 2. Ohio State's main problem for running back, though, isn't the playmaking capabilities, isn't the ceiling, it isn't even the depth. Miyan Williams had 128 carries, 825 yards, and 14 rushing touchdowns, and he averaged 6.4 yards per carry, which was 20th in that category. Very impressive when he played. Henderson had 107 attempts, 571 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, and 5.3 yards per carry. Certainly a regression from his 2021 self, but he did well in 2021, and in 2022 when healthy, you still saw that 5-star potential and speed and space potential. But again, I'm using the word potential a lot, and that's because health. If you're not a healthy player, but you have all this upside, but you're not consistent, you're not going to be reliable. Reliability is a concern for Ohio State's running back room, in the same way that depth is for Penn State's running back room. They're not huge concerns because the way that Ohio State's running back room functioned last year due to injuries was an anomaly. It is rare to have your 2 starting running backs, both who are very good players, get injured and sidelined that often. I don't think that will happen again. And I think Ohio State could have the nation's deepest running back room. Williams, Henderson, and Hayden are all great running backs all around and balanced. You have a power back in Chip Trayanum. This running back room could contend for number 1, and I think Ohio State will have its best rushing attack in the Ryan Day era outside of J.K. Dobbins in 2019. That's how good this run attack will be. And I know Ohio State loses both of their tackles. They lose center Luke Whippler, but the interior of that O-line, with Donovan Jackson, the interior of that O-line, remember that 5-star offensive guard, part of the same class as Henderson, along with Matthew Jones at guard? Both of them return. Both are very good at guard. I think Ohio State and the interior of that O-line is going to be able to create huge holes. And the dive play, the running in a horizontal up and down the field sense, not the stretch sense, I think that part of Ohio State's running game is going to be phenomenal with the returning production at guard, and especially if Williams can be healthy. Now we're going to move on to Michigan, the number 1 running back room in the Big Ten. I think the number 1 running back room in the nation, and it might not be by a smidgen compared to Ohio State and Penn State. It might be a mile compared to those 2 teams, because Michigan, not only have they been healthier than Ohio State at running back, not only do they have more depth than Penn State at running back, some might even argue they have similar depth to Ohio State at running back, though I think Ohio State slightly edges Michigan at that position. Their overall offense is catered to the running back position. That is the focus and identity of the Michigan Wolverines, running back. And I think Michigan will win the 2023 national champion, which is partially why I said your 2023 national champion, in my opinion, will have elite running back play. They will focus on running the football. They will be able to be explosive and smash mouth when it comes to their rushing offense, because that's what Michigan is. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards very well could be the number 1 or number 2, and vice versa, running backs in the country. They could be the nation's best 2 running backs on the same team in 2023. They combined for 2,454 rushing yards, 25 rushing touchdowns, and they averaged 6.3 yards per carry. And like Ohio State, they returned both of their starting guards in Zach Zinner and Trevor Keegan, and they bring in transfer portal players on the offensive line. Miles Hinton and Ladarius Henderson, an offensive tackle / guard, and they bring in Drake Nugent, a standout center from Stanford, to replace Olu Oluwatimi, who is also a transfer who is now going to pursue the NFL. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Look, Corum is very similar to Miyan Williams. You have that power element You also have that shifty element, the speed element, speed and space element. I mean, you are an all-around great back. Donovan Edwards, on the other hand, if he can develop a little more power, a little more consistency, he would be the ideal all-purpose back. He looks like a receiver when he's receiving out of the backfield or when he runs even deep routes or medium routes. He looks like one of the best running backs in the nation when he gets in space, when he gets open in space. And look, he has the frame to develop that power element and be a guy who can fall forward and gain you a few extra yards and get several hundred yards after contact. Donovan Edwards is a unicorn. He has the unicorn potential, which is something that Michigan has not seen, not only at the running back position in a long time, but just in general. Michigan has not really had a guy with unicorn potential since maybe Rashawn Gary. And we all know how that turned out. It was not amazing in college football. Great college player, great professional player, but he was never elite at the college football level like his number one ranking in high school might have indicated. Donovan Edwards, if given opportunities, and if he's fully healthy, because he did struggle with health last year, he could show out and be a unicorn at the running back position. He could even be better than Blake Corum, who's nearly unanimously picked to be the best running back in the nation for 2023, widely considered. The Wolverines also have an experienced backup in sophomore C.J. Stokes, who had to play in a lot of games due to injury of Donovan Edwards. You got Kalel Mullings to sort of use as a fullback, though you have to work with him and train him to carry the football better and just be a better fullback. But still, for the improvised work that he had to do, and he also played a little bit on defense, that's always good depth to have, is that bigger presence at running back. And incoming freshman Cole Cabana was listed as a player to watch, according to some websites. Very underrated running back, and he's going to certainly boost Michigan's running back room depth. Michigan could have the best best two running backs in the nation. Don't worry, I'm picking Michigan to win the national title. I am a Michigan fan. There's no way they have the two best wide receivers in the country. You'd have to be on some kind of hard drugs to think that. But both Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum should cross 1,500 yards if they are healthy all year. Michigan, with the offensive line they have, with a somewhat weaker non-conference schedule that they have, and with the matchup advantage they have with every Big Ten defense, if both of these running backs stay healthy, Corum could get 2,000 yards, Edwards could get 1,500 plus a few more in the receiving game. Michigan's offense overall, it wouldn't surprise me if they were number one in scoring with the amount of returning production they have there. Again, though, all three of these running back rooms have the potential to be the number one room in the nation. All three are elite. All three of these teams also have great, near elite to elite, in the case of Michigan and Ohio State, offensive line play. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this breakdown and just talking about who I think are the top three running back rooms in the nation and why that is and some of their strengths and weaknesses, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. And if you're listening via Spotify, please follow the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.